If you weren't already freaked out about summer travel, just wait till you see the airplane horror movie Row 19. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch or Pass. Today I'm reviewing Row 19, a new Russian horror film that's coming to digital Blu-ray and DVD on May 31st, 2022 from Welgo USA. It's a horror movie that takes place almost entirely on a plane when unsettling, horrible, gruesome things start to happen to various passengers, and the doctor on board thinks that maybe this is related to something that happened in her past. My hot take is I think you should rent it. It's a little bit short, but overall I liked the camera angles and the mystery, and also I really liked the ending. I thought the ending did a pretty good job of tying things together and kind of being a little bit different than what I expected from a horror movie. So overall, it left me with a good feeling, but I think it's ultimately a rental. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and talk a little about the ending. So if you don't want to know what happens in the film, turn this off when I get to the ending discussion. I'll leave it vague until I get to the ending. But up until then, you can listen to my thoughts and see if maybe this is something you want to check out. So in Row 19, you have Ekaterina, played by Svetlana Ivanova, who's also known as Katya. She's taking a trip with her daughter, and kind of the big thing that happened in Katya's past is 20 years ago, she was on a plane that went down, and she was the only survivor. Everyone else on the plane died, kind of like Unbreakable, right? Like you have a big tragic accident, and one person survives. She gets, a lot of media attention, and now she is taking another trip right around the 20th anniversary of the last plane crash. And so she's nervous, but she's trying to put on a strong face for both like the public, because there's news reports about her and she wants to make sure that everyone knows that she's not afraid, and her daughter. But as you can imagine, this is not a great experience for her. And as things become more and more unsettling, she begins to suspect that maybe this is all related to the crash that she survived. Maybe like a Final Destination situation where the entity that like crashed the plane before is now back for vengeance. And she has to figure out what to do to get out of this and to save her daughter. So things I liked about this movie. The first, I really like the camera angle, especially at the start. It does a really good job of, conveying this cramped space. I mean, everyone's traveled by plane. It is not a great space. It's not, you don't have much leg room, you don't have much arm room. And the camera angles do a really good job of showing this. It does a really good job of kind of maximizing the space to let you see everything that's going on, but still feel like you're confined. Like you still get, the sense that there's not that much room around, but you do get to see everything that goes on. You don't really ever feel like you're missing out on things unless the director wants you to miss out on things. But overall, it does a really good job of kind of giving you that airplane feel, right? That doesn't really feel like a good thing, but in a movie that takes place on an airplane, it's really good to have that realistic, cramped, claustrophobic kind of feeling. So the second thing I liked is the mystery. I mean, this film has a lot of kind of mysterious undertones. There's definitely some supernatural elements, and you don't really know what's going on. And early on, you do get a sense that the events that are happening on this flight with Katya mirror things that might have happened on her first flight. And as the story goes, you kind of get more on both flights. You get more information on like things that happened on her first flight, and then also you get additional mystery because things start to happen on her main flight. It's a nice way to keep you engaged because you keep kind of learning little tidbits here and there. And the last thing I really liked is the ending. Like I said, I wasn't expecting it to end this way. I liked how it kind of wrapped everything up. I like how it kind of like bucked some traditional horror trends. It definitely wasn't what I expected to happen. And so I really liked kind of that. It threw me for that surprise. And also, the overall ending situation and how it tied the story together. So things I didn't like. The first are the effects. I mean, for the most part, there aren't a ton of effects in this movie, but when they do have effects, they are pretty clearly CG. There's some CG for the supernatural elements. There's some CG things that happen that kind of unsettle Katya, and images of the plane itself are pretty clearly CG. So, it's not bad. Like it's decent CG, but it definitely is noticeable, and it definitely took me out of the experience. And like I always kind of say, in horror, you definitely don't want to use CG because you want to stay in the experience. You want to kind of suspend that disbelief. And when you see something that is obviously CG, even if it's pretty well done, it definitely kind of takes you out of the moment. So the second thing I didn't love is the film is too short. Look, it's 78 minutes long. It's long enough to kind of establish the story and kind of say what it wants to say, but it did feel pretty short. And look, like it's a plane trip. Any plane trip that ends early, you're probably pretty happy about. But here I wanted to spend a little bit more time learning more about the characters and learning more about Katya's past. You get a decent amount, but it would have been nice to have just a few more supernatural situations, a few more elements to kind of extend the flight and extend the terror. And the last thing I didn't really love is there's not that much terror. Like it's a thriller. It has unsettling moments, but for the most part, you don't really ever feel that afraid, which is kind of a bummer because an airplane is a great location for a horror movie because there's not really you can't really go anywhere, you can't really escape it, you kind of have to deal with it. But this movie just didn't really have the, I don't know, the sinister aspects or the amount of terror that I was hoping for. Maybe that was because it was so short, maybe because it was just a different type of horror movie, but I don't know, it didn't have as much horror as I was hoping for. So going to the ending, and like I said, this is where there will be spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happens in the film, turn this off now. So in the original flight that Katya took, she was on this plane, and then things started happening. There was a commotion in the back, and then there appeared to have been like a fire up front. And she turns around and she sees like an old lady with like white eyes kind of chanting at her, and that's the last thing she remembers. And so she wakes up, and she she doesn't really know what happened. She kind of stumbles around, and she no one else is there, and she has a scar from the crash like on her leg. I think something cut her leg pretty badly, so she has that memento with her all the time. Now on this flight, things start to happen that are similar. There's a couple in the back where the husband has like a sudden heart attack and just kind of like dies on the plane, very similar to something that happened on her very first flight. And then later, a freak accident, it's a very kind of Final Destination moment where like there's a bottle of liquor that's like leaking onto someone, and then also there's like an open oxygen container underneath that they used earlier. And so this person, when he lights up a cigarette, it ignites something, and he kind of just gets set on fire. Like the alcohol was all over him and the oxygen kind of blows on him, so he just kind of goes up in flames. They're able to get him out, but he is definitely not doing well. He's definitely feeling pain. And again, this seems to mirror something that happened on Katya's first flight. So eventually, as things get stranger and stranger, Katya wants to take her daughter and leave. Eventually, Katya sees from like one of the passengers is like, he's seeing visions and he's drawing out what he's seeing. And so she's looking through his pages, and she sees this like dark figure at the front of the plane. And so she's like it seems to be telling her to go in that direction. But all the passengers seem to be preventing her from going there. They all kind of like want to keep her where she is. Eventually things just get very weird. That person that was like drawing, he just kind of like poof goes into smoke. And then, one of the flight attendants who's like trying to prevent her from going forward, trying to tell her to not leave, she just starts like spewing water out of her mouth, and like she collapses. And so she gets to the door, she gets her daughter, and she tries to leave. And that's when this character Alexei, who's been very nice to them, he's been a very kind of like nice person, tries to stop her, but then he starts bleeding from his face as well. And so eventually like a gash appears on his head, and he collapses as well. So finally Katya is free to like go forth with her daughter. She pushes through the door, moves to the plane some more, and eventually gets to a new door, opens it up, and now she's in the original plane, the plane that went down 20 years ago, but it's just Katya. Her daughter's not there. And she's alone in here, which is weird. And then she sees something from the front. It's this like shadowy figure, and she starts to kind of get an explanation of what's happening. So it switches between like her adult self in this plane with this shadowy figure coming towards her, and then Katya as a child in the plane 20 years ago with that like witch character behind her. And the witch starts explaining like, essentially she wanted to shield this young girl from death, like wanted to prevent her from seeing the horrors of death. So she put her to sleep to try to let her experience some of the life that she was never going to have. But she says that Katya is a special child, and she keeps trying to wake up. She keeps trying to like push herself out of this spell. And so the witch can like no longer hold the spell. So essentially Katya is kind of like left to her fate. Like she doesn't want to stay in this dream world. So she's going to break the spell. And now like her fate is in her hands. And as it is happening, that shadow creature gets closer and closer. And eventually, that shadow thing takes on a face, and it's young Katya, and they like kind of combine. And then you see Katya's daughter at the very back of the plane. So Katya like goes to her, and essentially, because she's going to wake up, she's going to be 20 years in the past. She's not going to have this life. Like she's not going to have her daughter. So she's pretty upset. She's like, saying like, don't leave me. And her daughter says, I'll see you eventually, mommy. And she's like, how? Like, I don't, how am I going to see you? And her daughter says, you just have to listen. And then we have this nice like flashback of a few scenes throughout the flight where her daughter, older Katya and her daughter kept trying to tell her to go to like a certain place. Like when they first got on the plane, she like went back to row 19 and she said, here's our seats, mommy. And Katya was like, no, our seats are up here. And then eventually, when Katya was trying to get her daughter to like go forward with her daughter's like, no, like back here, just stay here. You don't listen. And then we also see a picture that her daughter had drawn, and it was a picture of the plane, and it was like her and her mom in the back with a big 19 over their window. So like her daughter had been trying to tell her to go to row 19 throughout the flight, and she just hadn't listened. And so finally she's like understanding, okay, like row 19 has some significance. I just have to get there. And then Katya wakes up, young Katya wakes up, and we see, she's in the middle of the plane. Her mother is in the back trying to help that person that was having a heart attack. There's like a fire up front. There's chaos happening. The plane is starting to fall. And her and young Katya like heads back, yells for her mom, eventually convinces her that they have to get to row 19. So they get to row 19. Her mom buckles her. Her mom is having trouble with the buckle, and Alexei, the Alexei that we've known before, but now like Alexei in the past, helps buckle her mom right before there's like an explosion. A piece of shrapnel just like hits him in the face, and he like collapses. So that was why he had a cut on his face, and that's why he died there. But now Katya and her mom are buckled up. They're in the plane, and it's going down. And so the plane crashes, and the film ends with like a picture, like a scene of the wreckage. It's a pretty nice, actually, it's a pretty well done scene. I don't think this is CG, which is, it's a pretty well done scene. It looks like, a good amount of plane wreckage. And it scrolls up, and you see just the back of the plane kind of like sheared right in front of row 19. And Katya and her mom are still in their seat. They're the only survivors. And there you go. That's the movie. Like I said, I liked the ending. I thought it was kind of a nice, very different horror movie. I like this one where like there's a little bit of hope, and they had like a Sixth Sense kind of moment. It had like an aha gotcha moment. So I liked how it ended. I thought it was pretty well done at the end. And so overall, it kind of left me with a happy feeling, which is why I said it's ultimately a rental. So that is row 19. It comes to digital Blu-ray and DVD on May 31st, 2022. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you, and safe travels.